Hello, everybody. We've all decided that we're going to talk a little about funeral honors and make it a little bit less formal. There is a PowerPoint that was prepared if anybody's interested in reading about the actual regulations involved with the funeral honors program. And I also prepared a Word document that gives you a little bit of a cheat sheet for anybody that's interested.
And Lisette, I did drop that in the day 5 Fantail files, so anyone on this call will have full access to those for future reference.
Okay, cool. So first, a little bit about what I've been doing. I've been doing funeral honors for about 8 years. I'm the only one in this area that plays taps live, which apparently is a novelty. But everybody does funeral honors for their own reason. Some people do it for the money. Some people do it for the points. Some people do it for the satisfaction. Some people do it for a combination of all of those things. I get tremendous satisfaction from doing funeral honors. I think that it's really beneficial to the families to get to hear live taps, and unfortunately, not everybody can do that. It also does provide a funeral point and a drill for everybody that does one if you are interested in going back to your NOSCs and inquiring about it. Every NOSC has a funeral honor coordinator, usually a second-class petty officer, that's in charge of the program. But this is going to be informal, so I would like to get questions on what exactly we do. I can give you a little brief rundown first, and then if anybody has any questions, please feel free to chime in. Usually, most NOSCs run things differently, but the coordinator will send out a request for volunteers for funeral whenever one comes in. You respond to that, and if you're chosen, because sometimes there could be a lot of people that volunteer, sometimes there could be very few, if anybody. They'll send you an email with all the details of the service, and you usually will have to be at the service. 45 minutes is what the regulation says. Some NOSCs require an hour prior to the actual time. I've been on funeral honors, 2-man details, where one person either does taps and then also does the flag detail, and I've done 3-man details where I've played taps and there were 2 people that did the flag. But you get to once you have all the information, sometimes you can coordinate with the people that you're with, and the senior person on the detail is in charge of the detail. As a chief, you could be the senior person, you could be the junior person. For a 3-man, you could be in the middle. I've been on funeral details with seamen all the way up to captains. So it really does depend on where you fall in with that. But funerals can be at cemeteries, they can be at funeral homes, they can be at other locations that are kind of bizarre. I've done them in just like a hall, done them outside at a barbecue. Most of them will be at the graveside or at a funeral home. Usually we try to go first, but sometimes they really prefer that we go when they want us to go. So you have to be flexible. It is the family, they get what they want. It's their funeral. It's their loved one that passed away. So we try to do what they request. Does anybody have any questions about what all this entails?
Not a question, but Lisette, can you talk to the selects a little bit about the importance of us doing these funerals as reservists? You know, a little bit about how for most of these veterans, their only real understanding of the Navy is this ceremony, and the fact that a lot of these funerals being done are for veterans that had 4 years or less of service as the majority.
Yeah, that's true. We a lot of these funerals, they never see Navy people or military people in general. So when they see us, they see the Navy. So it's really important that we're representing the Navy, that our uniforms look sharp, that we're very respectful to them, and that when they see us, they say, okay, that's the Navy, and that they're impressed with what we do. He's right. Most of these funeral honors that we're doing are for people with 4 years or less of service. The only requirement to be eligible for funeral honors is honorable service. So that covers a broad range of people. I mean, I have done funerals where the people were retired, but for the most part, if you read their bios, which you can actually look up when you get the request, you can go in and find out about what these sailors were about. A lot of them, they were third classes or second classes when they got out, and hopefully they were older. I've done some funerals where the member that had passed away was relatively young, and that's heartbreaking, even if you didn't know them. But it's really important that the military, all branches, that we continue to do these services. There's not enough active duty military members. They don't to do them. If you're at a major base, there may be a funeral honor detail there, but the reserve centers, we're all over the country, so veterans are all over the country, so we're the only link between where these veterans reside when they pass away and us being able to do these services. Does anybody, first of all, how many of you of the selects already do funeral honors? Anybody? I see one hand. Anybody have any questions? Master Chief, anything else you think I need to cover?
So I would just reiterate the fact that, you know, these folks aren't having these honors. They're not getting to have their loved ones be remembered for their naval service if it wasn't for us as reservists going out and doing these services. I know I've been doing these pretty much since I joined. So, you know, over 16 years I've been doing funeral honors now. And like Chief Walker was saying, everyone's different. You got to be flexible. You got to roll with what the family wants. Your plan going in could completely go to crap. You know, once they roll things in, the funeral homes aren't always on top of what they're supposed to be doing. Sometimes a casket is situated in the wrong direction, which totally throws your plan for how you're going to present, show, and fold that flag. And you do have to understand the different scenarios that can come in place and be able to think on your feet. You know, mistakes happen, you know, and to a certain good side of everything, those families might not understand exactly what's happening in front of them. But that's not an excuse to not know what you're supposed to be doing and to be squared away while you're doing it. And I know for me, it's an immensely personal thing to be able to go out and give that honor for those members, knowing that they wouldn't receive it otherwise. And my own dad passed away 2 years ago, and, you know, very surreal for doing those honors for, you know, 15 years, and then to have that flag presented to me. The mindset that the families are in and everything else just goes into the total amount of understanding and respect that you need to take for that ceremony that you're providing. A lot of NOS, at least every NOS that I've done them with, there are never enough reservists available to do these honors. Obviously, things ebb and flow in terms of how many a NOS or a region is doing at any given time, but I haven't done a funeral honors with a 3-person detail in better part of a year because we're spread so thin. We have to spread them out, and, you know, we have 2 people on each funeral. So with that, I charge you, if this is something that touches home to you, if any of the conversations we've had this week around KCO and remembrance, you know, this is another continuation of all of that, being able to do these honors. And, you know, I put the plug out there for all NOSCs. All NOSCs could use help. All NOSCs need more people. So if it is something you're interested in, to Roger up for it. But more importantly, take this information forward and make sure your sailors are getting it. There are intrinsic value to this. I'm a big proponent of it because of the honoring side. But for your junior sailors' sake, they get paid. You get paid a drill period, whatever that is. You get a retirement point for every one that you do. And then on top of that, most NOS do have an awards program. When you hit 25 or 50 funeral honors, you get a NAM. For some junior sailors, that might be the first award that they actually get. So, please go take a look at those instructions that we dropped, save them down, read through them. And even if you don't move forward with this yourself, next drill weekend, sit down and have that conversation with your sailors. Hey, who's interested in funeral honors? Do you know about funeral honors? Here's the information, here's the program, and this is why we do it. So that would kind of be my couple-minute take on funeral honors in general. So I know we have technically have 15 minutes left in the session. So I'd love to field some questions between Chief Walker and myself, or just in general. So don't be shy. Come off mute, and let's get a couple questions here.
You ready? John.
Yep.
Let me add one thing that I've always found is that having gone to funerals, military, and fire emergency services, you need to practice. You gotta practice that flag folding before you ever get there. You gotta be proficient, because that's gotta be sharp. It's gotta be presented appropriately with dignity. This is like Lisette said, this may be the first time they're seeing the military, period, in their area. So we have to be sharp. Our movements, our flag folding, everything we do has to be sharp. Having been down in DC and watching our young sailors that are chosen for the ceremonial guard, we have the smallest group of people in the military that do those honors. Right? They practice constantly. So as a reserve side, we don't get to practice it on a daily basis like they do. But if you're going to do it, or you're going to have your junior sailors out there doing it, you have to be proficient. So I think that's my biggest.
Yeah, and along with that, I 100% agree, John. Great comments. The NOS have training programs. At least the NOS I've been associated with. Maybe not all NOS tend to have.
Yeah.
They have training caskets. They have plenty of flags. If you volunteer, they'll bring you in on a drill weekend. You'll go out on the drill deck and you'll practice, what you need to do. I know, on top of that, most places authorize at least 2 funerals as a trainee, to where you're maybe the 4th person and you're not there to do anything but to watch and observe, just so that you can see how this goes before you get thrown into the mix of doing them. So, that's a training tool that they have as well. I can tell you at this point, my civilian job gets in the way of doing some of them, but my uniform is constantly being carried in the backseat of my car.
I carry mine in my backseat too.
as well as a flag. I have a flag because, I'll give an example. I was at a national cemetery 2 weeks ago, and because we were in a one-day continuing resolution, the Navy wasn't able to send any more than 1 reservist to do a funeral. So I had 2 NOSC E3s FTS sent to me, and neither of them had ever done a funeral before, nor had any guidance or practice. So that's something we talked about with the NOSC a little bit. But thank goodness that I had that flag that I carry with me in my car, because we do get there an hour early, and we were able to walk through it a couple times, and we practiced folding the flag 5-6 times. I certainly can't fold the flag by myself, so we did some super quick training. But again, the idea of staying proficient. I took a lull for a couple of years between doing funerals, and when I came back into it, I can't tell you how many times when I'm feeling a little rusty, I break my flag out and make my wife fold it with me. It's you just do what you got to do to remain proficient, and there's certainly ways to do it.
Yeah, everybody should learn all three aspects of it, because you never know what you're gonna do till you get to it and see who you're on it with. That electronic bugle, which is used if there's no live bugle, does have things that could go wrong with it. And I've heard horror stories from other people where the batteries didn't work, or it worked, but then it stopped halfway through. And that nothing is more embarrassing than having something like that happen.
Yeah. And I also carry extra set of batteries in my car, for exactly that reason. I check the bugle. I'm not always the one carrying it. And I'll give you a good example of what Chief Walker just said. I did a funeral the other day with a lieutenant commander, and I myself, so like I mentioned, usually the senior most person is the person, just holding the flag, being folded to, and you're doing the presentation part. So certainly in my case, 90% of the time I'm the senior most person, and I do that every single time. The same was true for this lieutenant commander. We don't get very many officers generally that are doing the flag honors. And while I had no problem folding, she was absolutely terrified when I showed up for that funeral, because she wasn't. All of a sudden it dawned on her that oh, maybe she might have to fold. And I told her, no, ma'am, I see you're still the most senior person, and I'll do the folding, no issues. But it brings to point that just because you can get comfortable and into the this is what I'm always going to be doing, and that's absolutely not true.
I did a funeral with two captains and me, and I was playing the bugle, so one of those captains had to fold.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen. There's so many different scenarios. Sometimes you're going out in inclement weather, and you thought you were going to be the bugle player, and that's all you know how to do. And lo and behold, one of the other guys come and gets stuck in the snow and doesn't get there on time. So there's just so many little things. We could talk for hours about all the little quirks and weird things that can happen, but I'll share one story, and I'd ask Chief Walker to share one as well. One of my most memorable funerals that I ever did, and had to have been a Black Baptist funeral in Central Florida when I lived down there. You want to talk about people that know how to celebrate life? Let me tell you what. It was the longest funeral I ever sat at. I was there for like 3 hours before it was our turn, because that's what they wanted to do, and you got to be flexible. But man, it was music, it was singing, it was dancing, and they would not let me get out of that place until I drove 2 miles down the road and got myself a plate full of food. So, it's not all somberness is what I say. It's not all death and destruction. We're there to remember someone's life, not focus on the fact that they're gone. So it's certainly that was one of my most memorable funerals that I've done. So I don't know, Chief Walker, if you'd have one that you want to share.
Sure. I had one where we were in very rural Maryland, and they had a horse and buggy with people dressed in coattails that were guiding this thing. And they had it was almost like when Teddy Roosevelt came up on his thing. They had the casket on the back of the horse and buggy, and then everybody was like parading from the church to the cemetery behind that. So that was it was probably a first for me to see that, but it was very interesting. And then they also released doves that same day. So you never know what you're going to see. Everybody, all these families, they celebrate funerals and they differently. They all have, a lot of people, they want to celebrate life. They don't want to think about the death. So they're a lot more partying, like as Master Chief was just saying with his. And then some are very somber. And also this year, there's been a lot that have been affected by the pandemic. So I've had some that were live streamed because some of the spouse had tested positive for COVID, so she couldn't be at her husband's funeral. So they live streamed the funeral, and they only had a few people that they had tested at the actual funeral. So that was pretty sombering just to see that. And I felt really bad because this poor spouse couldn't even be the one at the funeral herself. But anybody have any questions? I know we actually haven't gotten any. Thought I saw something go up earlier.
I'd say we'll grab a question, and then we'll close the training out. We're coming close to time here. Okay. So one good question from a selectee, or I'll even take a question. It's not good.
So, real quick, Master Chief and Lisette, hey, the selects, pay attention to what's going on in the chat. I'll share that one of the most difficult funeral honors participations that I helped facilitate was my own father-in-law. Master Chief Mangum did, I believe it was his cousin and someone else. So it can hit home, and you have to do what you need to do at that time and then grieve later.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if we don't have any questions, we'll conclude the training here. You know, feel free to reach out to myself or Chief Walker at any point if you want some more information, just want to chat a little bit more about it. But as I mentioned, those files for review are in the day 5. They're clearly marked as funeral honors type training. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Alvin for the next instructions.